keep rolling. Thank you everyone for joining us today again for the last workshop. Hi, Mike. Um, this is our last workshop, but all the previous editions, if you missed those, are available on our website on Charitable Society. I will put those in the chat too if you would like to refer to it. All the links. With the further notes from Quammie Williams, so make sure to check them out. And thank you so much again for joining us for the last session. And I'll just make sure to please keep yourselves muted. Unless you have a question, please put it on the chat, and you can unmute yourself and ask it. So yeah.
Or if you have a comment.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, and it's up to you, Quammie.
Okay, thank you so much. I want to welcome everyone back. Those of you who weren't with us the last time, then welcome back. And today we're going to talk a little bit about starting your own business, or the idea of artists as entrepreneurs. And so yeah, let's just jump right in. Let me share my screen. And by the way, if you have comments or so, I like to make it as conversational as possible, and I'll manage it properly to make sure that we get through all the material. But if you have comments, make sure that you jump right in. Let's have a good conversation. I want to make sure that we've at least had an opportunity to delve into what people are interested in. Oh, there we go. Okay. All right. So, as I was said, today we were going to talk a bit about the idea of artists as entrepreneurs, starting your own business. The time that we have is short, so I tried to kind of give a highlight overview, look at it, and then depending on what your questions or comments or so might be, we can drill down a little bit further. Again, thank you to the Toronto Blues Society and Hummer and Derek for all of their support in providing this opportunity. So let's talk a little bit about what entrepreneurship is. I kind of have my own definition of it, which I've shared with you here. It may be synchronous with some other definitions and perhaps a little bit different than some. But in my concept of entrepreneurship, it's the art of creating opportunities for financial and cultural growth by conducting environmental assessments, and I describe that as observing the world around you, researching, etc., envisioning possibilities, identifying opportunities, and setting goals and objectives. Check. Can everybody hear me okay? Just nod if you can.
Yes.
Yes? Okay, good. Yeah, no, I got a little flag telling me that my audio wasn't working. Okay, so as I said, attracting, harnessing, and managing financial and human resources, employing creativity and strategic thinking to fulfill a market demand, creatively responding to ongoing change, which is why the idea of remaining flexible is important, creating profit and opportunities for others to grow, and prioritizing opportunities and managing risks. This is my sort of concept of entrepreneurship. Now, artists as entrepreneurs,
Oops, I think your mic is off. We can hear you now.
Can you hear it now? Can you hear it now?
Yep. Just went off for a second again.
Yeah, hold on. Let me see if I can fix that once and for all.
Also, please make sure to mute yourself while during the presentation, please. If not, I'm just going to go ahead and mute you. And you can always unmute yourself if you have any questions along the way.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, let's try that and see if that works better. Right, so artists as entrepreneurs, I think, are in a unique situation, right? So first of all, most artists are creatives, meaning that they're able to think outside of the existing paradigms fairly easily, because it's part of the exercises we do as artists in terms of the way that our brains tend to function. A lot of studies have been done on this. I'm not going to delve too much into that, but because we're creatives, we're usually able to think outside of the existing paradigms, which means the ability to formulate a new idea or see something that's possible where perhaps others may not. I think, I'd like to say that we have a really good facility in that regard. Artists are often accustomed to creating value in an environment of limitations. Many artists are used to working in teams, as they work in bands and so on. And without realizing it, often we develop, quite the ability in terms of how to work in a group. There are some artists, of course, that are solo artists, but I would say the majority of artists understand how to work as a group, whether you are working on a musical album, theater production, etc. We certainly understand how to work as a group to achieve a particular end, right? Many have already developed strong brands. In other words, they may have a following from the artistic work that they do, and they may have also have had to overcome. Strong brands that can be leveraged. That's the key point there. Now, many have also may have had to overcome stigmas associated with arts careers. So this is what I would say can be a negative, and that is that there's a perception in the society often of artists being non-business people, right? And that in fact they may be the antithesis of business. Okay, I think this is starting to change, but nevertheless, I think those thoughts are there as residue from a time in the past. Often artists can be denied full support of family and community members. I would not be the only artist who, for example, had a family who essentially waited for years and years and years for me to come to my senses and go into something else, right? So when this comes to loan institutions, right, which sometimes can be important with regards to leveraging additional finances and so on, many artists can be perceived by loan institutions as unemployed. I'm talking from personal experience, had a bank manager when I tried to get a loan at one point with regards to one of my business endeavors. Essentially, when I said that I was a musician and so on, and this was at a time when I was making a fairly good living at it, I noticed that they put down on the application form that I was unemployed. So that some of those things still exist. As I said, it's a shifting situation, but some of these stigmas and biases still exist. So that's what we have to contend with. Also, now with regards to identifying opportunities, consider opportunities within and without the music industry. So I'm speaking specifically about us as musicians, but this could apply for any arts. Do not think that because we're musicians that our business has to be within the music industry. Artists have many transferable skills that may be the bases of success in other industries. And so we need to consider broadly opportunities across the board. First of all, engage society through all of its channels, be open and communicate. You can't generate business ideas or have understanding of what perhaps might be needed in the marketplace if you're never engaging the marketplace, right? People have to become, outgoing in the sense of networking, and this is just at the stage of evolving ideas. This isn't. It's even before you get to the stage of actually identifying the opportunity you want to pursue. You should already be networking, speaking to people, engaging. Social media is a tremendous tool for that. Get on it, check it out, what's going on with folks. That's the way that you're going to be able to quickly identify where there are opportunities. Be prepared to research, engage and study other entrepreneurs, okay? So I found out that, this particular entrepreneur tried this particular endeavor. They had a little bit of success at it. Even if they weren't absolutely successful, what they did in the process of getting to it is what I'm interested in, right? What are the ideas that they went through? Why didn't those ideas work? Were there failures? How can we all learn from that entrepreneur's failures, right? Which is why if you meet entrepreneurs who are truly in love with entrepreneurship, they will talk about their failures just as readily as they talk about their successes, because failures are actually part of the building blocks that make successful entrepreneurs, okay? And hopefully you will be the same. Talk about everything, failures, successes, little bits of successes, whatever, but it's an ongoing process of engaging and studying other people and your own opportunities. Opportunities exist where the demand for something is in excess of the available supply. That's just a basic, verbiage, if you like, that is almost always true. Now, sometimes you have to create a demand, okay? So, yes, it's true that opportunities exist where demand is in excess of available supply, but sometimes you have to create the demand. Sometimes you have to stimulate the marketplace with something that they never really thought about before. And then the demand is created, and then you're able to supply the demand. Also, there are sometimes opportunities where demand exists right now that are not being fulfilled. Okay, those are always opportunities. And I want to share another thing, which is often where there is a shift in paradigm, there are opportunities that are going to be available. So, for example, when we shifted, as you can see, just to give, perhaps an example that people might be familiar with, when computers became as pervasive as they are right now, it caused a shift in paradigm, right? And as we spoke about in some of the other sessions we had, as you can see, we are no longer disseminating music predominantly in the way that we were before. That's because there was a shift in paradigm. That shift in paradigm caused a bundle of opportunities for new entrepreneurs who, for example, may have gotten in early on the streaming as a business, or gotten in early on, some of the other platforms that exist that now are seeing them be financially successful from it, and so on. So wherever there's a shift in paradigm, there are also opportunities, okay? The rate of return on the labor and money invested is reasonable. This is the junction at which we're going to find opportunities, right? That the rate of return on the labor that we invest into it and the money that we invest into it is good and reasonable when compared to the risk, right? Opportunities for first mover position are extremely valuable. So by first mover position, what I mean is, if you are coming into something that may end up being an industry, if you are the first, it means that you have an opportunity to introduce this idea to the marketplace and align yourself with it. Okay, so there's a reason, for example, that there are some brands that are so strong if they were one of the first, or if they took first mover position. There's a reason we call tissues Kleenex and stuff like that. Okay, so first mover position, extremely valuable. To be the first at delivering a product to the marketplace is extremely powerful if you can capitalize on it. Do you have access to the resources and the market to make the business happen? That's a huge question that we all have to ask. Do we have the resources? We identify the opportunity or the potential opportunity. Do we have the resources to do it? And also, is there actually a market for that? Those are fundamental questions that you want to ask yourself when identifying opportunities. Okay, don't be afraid to research. Research is extremely important. Industry research and what I call market research. So industry research is if there is already an industry for this product or service that I'm interested in providing, what's the size of that industry in dollars? Let's start to get a profile of it, right? Who are the players? Are there big players, small players? How many people in it are entrepreneurs like myself, just kind of, like a one-person business to begin with, and so and so? In Canada, we have a situation where the majority of our industry is characterized by small to medium-sized businesses. That's very different, for example, than the US, where major corporations tend to run the day. So what is the profile in your particular industry that you're interested in? And what are the success factors for the key players? So the people who found some success in it and are already achieving this success, what are the reasons they had that success? What was it that they were able to provide? What channels did they find to get, first of all, communicate their product to people, and also, if it's a physical product, how are they getting it to those people? If it's a service, what is the service? Is it a computer-based service? What is it that makes it, what is it that makes it click? All of these are things that you're going to learn so that you could establish your opportunity within the particular industry. Also, market research. A market profile means I have a really good understanding of who is a market for this particular product, right? And I am going to research and find what are the channels to reach that market. Pricing, packaging, how does that look, right? Because all of that will be tied up in my marketing effort. What is the catchment area? Now we're in a time of global marketing because of the fact of, online computer, Amazon. These people have, created a paradigm with regards to how we market products that we never saw before, right? Nowadays, I can order something right from my home, and it could probably arrive here within 2 or 3 days. And they're getting quicker and quicker at doing that delivery part of it. So it's changing the whole face of what you can expect, right? But understanding the market profile. If Bill has a book, sorry to use you, Bill, but it's such a good idea. If Bill has a book on improvisation, well, who's the market for that book? Okay, who's the market for that book? It's not beginner musicians necessarily, right? It may be people who already are playing, or people who are operating within particular people in schools, etc. There's a whole range of people who are going to be able to use this product, right? And it may in fact be beginners as well, depending on the way the book is laid out and who it's targeting, right? So that's always a decision that you have to make when you're creating your product. Who am I actually targeting? Right now, who's my primary target? In other words, who are the people really most likely to purchase this product, consume this product, etc.? And then my secondary marketers. Who are the people that, okay, I've taken care of the primary now. Who are the other people that might use it, etc., etc., and so on. Right? So that's important to determine as you do your research. Now, I just wanted to touch a little bit on registering a business in Ontario or in Canada. Now, it's not really the amount of people who I speak to who, for some reason, one reason or another, have a concept that registering a business is extremely difficult. It is so simple, I have to tell you. The ministries that are responsible have gone to great lengths to really simplify this. You can register your business online right now, okay? So the first thing that happens is you do what's called a nuance search, okay, to ensure that the company name is not already in use, because of course, you can't have a duplicate name along with another company. Sometimes they make a determination, the ministry, whether it's close or, so for example, you may have one significant word that is the same as another company, and then it kind of is a little bit, is it this way, is it that way? And then they make a decision whether or not that represents a conflict in terms of the name use, and then they will tell you, okay, you can't use that name, right? But really, it's fairly straightforward. You do the nuance search. The nuance search will last for a bit in terms of a couple of hours. So usually you do the nuance search right as you're going to register, because you don't want to do the nuance search last week and this week you're going to register. And in the meantime, someone in Quebec opened a business with the exact same name or so. The other thing is that you could register provincially with the Ontario government in our case, or you could register federally. And to register provincially, it is a branch, Central Production and Verification Services branch, and they are a branch of the Ministry of Government and Consumer Services. When they're open and we're operating normally, they're physically located University Avenue, north of Queen, just north of Osgoode Hall, right? The cost is $80. You can register as a sole proprietorship, which means that it's a singularly, individually owned business. When you do your taxes as a sole proprietorship, because there's no separation between the business and yourself, your tax that you do as an individual is the tax of your sole proprietorship, okay? You can also have a general partnership along with other folks who have an agreement to do the business together, and they will be general partners. You can also have limited partnerships, which means that you now have a partner who is really an investor, okay? And that investor, the reason they're a limited partner is because the liability that they can have is only limited to the amount of their investment, okay? They can't be on the hook for more than what they've put in. You can also begin a corporation, which is it can be an incorporated non-for-profit. That legally separates the shareholders and owners from the business entity itself. In other words, when you're a corporation, your business has a legal identity that is not the same as your own, okay? If you're a not-for-profit corporation, as, for example, I think the Toronto Blues Society might be. If you're a not-for-profit corporation, you're an organization that is incorporated and operated for a collective public or social benefit. Now, members who are in a not-for-profit corporation can be paid as long as the conflict of interest guidelines are observed. So there are guidelines as to, for example, one of them usually is that when it comes to negotiating what you will be paid for your service, if you're also a member of the organization, you cannot be involved in the discussion regarding the payment. You have to declare conflict of interest. You get up and say, look, I have a conflict of interest, and you leave basically the meeting. They do that part of the discussion, then you come back later and so on. So it's not, there often is a myth that if you're involved in a not-for-profit corporation that you can't be paid for your services, and that is absolutely not true. The ONCA, Ontario Not-for-Profit Corporations Act, is fairly new. In 2020, they redid the whole thing, and they lay out very, very clearly. So if you're interested in forming a not-for-profit, there are some great benefits in having a not-for-profit as a business, because one, if it's something that really is providing a social benefit, then that's a good opportunity to think about. Also, too, it allows you to be eligible for a variety of grants and so on that are normally eligible, that are normally available, sorry, not-for-profit organizations, and not so much to corporations, right? So that's important to know. Charitable status is a status that you can achieve from the CRA, the federal body, Canada Revenue, that allows you as a not-for-profit or nonprofit to give official tax receipt to people who contribute to you, with a donation. This is important because companies, individuals are more likely to want to donate to charitable organizations because they can get the tax receipt and then they can write it off on their taxes. All right. Now, a corporation has to have directors when it is incorporated, and they're usually elected or appointed, and their job is to oversee the corporation's business as a whole. Corporations officers, they're the people that work on the day-to-day operations of the corporation or the non-for-profit. Okay, so I hope that's helpful. We can come back with any questions on that if you want to delve further. Now, it is very important as you move forward with setting up your business that you actually, right from the beginning, start the process of what we call strategic planning. Okay, this gives your business shape. It makes it so that there's no confusion as to what the business is meant to do. You have a vision of a future state where you will be able to say, my business will be successful when this occurs. Then you know exactly what you're aiming for, what your vision is. And also you want to identify what are the overall objectives that I need to do in order to get my business from where I am now to that vision of success that I'm talking about. Okay, so laying out your vision, your mission, the objectives in broad terms, right, is extremely important. Looking also right from the beginning at your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, your threats, right? This kind of analysis, normally called a SWOT analysis, is just an acronym. But what it does is it encourages the business owner to take into consideration that they do have strengths. And then how can they maximize the benefits from those strengths? That they do have weaknesses. And then how can they maximize the benefits from overcoming those weaknesses? Out of the strengths, there's going to be opportunities that they can take because they have those strengths. And there are threats that exist because of where their weaknesses are. So entrepreneurship in one way could be viewed as maximizing the benefits from strengths and opportunities and minimizing the threats from weaknesses. Okay? And this is an ongoing process that you do all the time. That's why I always say to people, don't think of the strategic plan that you might create. Don't think of it as a one-time document that, yep, we got this, and sit it down. It's to work from. It's a working plan, right? And the most important thing about it is actually the process of doing it, because that's what informs you, the entrepreneur, and gets you always in knowledge of where you're at and where your business is at, where my weaknesses are, what is it that I need to mitigate risk, and so on. So that's why I say the strategic plan is a living document. It changes as environmental factors change. It articulates the development of structural systems. The systems, by the way, are important as means of normalizing success. So let's say, you know, we've got our service or our product that we're delivering, and we come up with a system as to, you know, how we manufacture it or how we produce that product or service and how we get it out to our customers, how we collect money for it, all of that. Okay, the reason that systems are important, or one good reason they're important, is that let's say that I need to scale up my business because it works. It's successful. My business is growing. I need to scale up my business now to have more clients, deliver more product or more service, etc. When I'm going to scale up my business, if I don't have a system, a working system that's efficient, my business is going to implode, right? Because whereas it may work in small numbers, when I go to scale up to try to make use of the fact that my client base is growing, if I don't have a proper systems in place, I can't scale up. I'll implode, right? So because what I'm going to do when I have more customers is I'm going to increase the volume and use the same systems and keep modifying them and keep making them better. But I have that system as a platform. I know this works. I know that if I do this, 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 and this, and this process works, this system works, okay? Can't stress how important it is to, as you evolve your business, to evolve systems that will cause your business to be efficient and so that you can scale up. The strategic plan identifies opportunities and articulates goals, objectives, methodology, measurement, and evaluation. Implementing the strategic plan is putting thought out strategies into practice. Okay? So yes, you may be risk averse as an entrepreneur in that, you know, you're not as concerned about risk as other people may be. Okay? However, though, there's still it's a measured risk, right? What you want to do is you want to put in place things that you thought out. Yes, I may have to modify it later because, you know what, I was wrong about that. And so this failed. That's okay. But it's something that you thought out, that you're putting into practice. It's not hit and miss. It's something you thought out. You have to manage behavioral and functional implementation. So that is now through your entire process of how you evolved your business. You have to manage behavior, your own behavior of people around you, in terms of how your business is represented, you know, and what is the functional implementation? Who do I need on board to provide which functions, etc. And of course, there's always strategic measurement and evaluation, because how many customers am I getting per month? As I'm beginning my business, if it's starting to grow, what is my rate of growth? What can I anticipate my growth will be by the end of the year? Because I'm measuring the rate at which it's growing. Or is it shrinking? What am I doing wrong if it's shrinking? Because negative growth is also something to measure too. So is it shrinking? And if it is, I started off and people were like, yeah, this is such a great idea. And then it started shrinking. Okay, why is it shrinking? Is there something that I'm not doing in my delivery? Is there something, or is there someone else in the marketplace who have kind of taken a similar idea and is finding a better way to make it more efficient, or to brand it better than I am, and so on, right? You'll see that. You see companies, who start out and they're having some success, and then all of a sudden you'll see them do what they call a rebranding, right? Sometimes it's because they're rebranding because they had an initial burst out the gate, but then they noticed that their sales started to drop, right? There's always an exercising of control and a responding to change, right? A change almost, I would say, has to be synchronous with entrepreneurship, because entrepreneurs have to find and continue to make their opportunities work in a constantly changing environment. Okay, this concept of your brand is increasingly important, more and more important now because of the way in which marketing is done, right? So the brand, your brand, in the case of your company, or your business, would be wrapped up in the way in which you create your product, your approach to the work. So, for example, you can have someone, who's producing a product, but you know what? The way they produce the product is that they find a way to include the ability for parents with small children to come to the company place where they have daycare provided and so on. So their brand will pretty soon be very, they will be known as a humanistic company, right? In that they're taking into consideration families and so on. So all of that could be part of somebody's brand, the way that the work is approached. Okay, the content, the form, the choice of media, your signature style, your of your engagement with them. More artists have the advantage of leveraging somewhat strong brands. If you're already an artist and you already have a following, well, it gives you an ability to jump into your business already having people that you could leverage as your first. It could be that, hey, you know what? Thank you so much for supporting and following. I'm launching this new business. I want you to support me. Chances are, if they are your loyal following, they'll be the first to engage the new business as well. Determine what you want to say and who needs to hear that message. Define the common goal that your combined business dealings are supposed to achieve. So that might be a philosophy. You may say, look, overall, what I aim to do is to provide opportunities for young artists to have residual income. That's right. That could be my common goal through the businesses. It's something that people will respond to as a strong brand. What will your positioning be in relation to your competitors? There's always, remember that it's a competitive environment. People can create, once you've created your product or your service, other people can duplicate it. So what will your positioning be in relation to what competitors may or may not do? Define your identity, your name, your logo design, which we could also call your icon. And your icon is your unique sensibility, image, celebrity status, if it exists, represented graphically. Okay? You want people to be able to identify this icon with you and what they know about you and all the positive attributes that you possess. Marketing, we've covered before, so I'm not going to spend too much time on. Marketing is a set of strategies, principles, and actions that when they're successful, they increase engagement and maximize the revenue to be gained from the selling of your products and your services. Some of the foundations are, what is that product going to be? How do I define the product? Have I taken the time to make sure that this product is something that people actually need? In order to determine that, I might do some market testing before I even go to the point of committing to that being the product. I might do some market testing amongst, a small area, a small group of people that gives me some feedback on how this product would be felt in the marketplace, et cetera, et cetera. Also, you want to concentrate on the people and businesses that will be a fit for your product. Those are the ones with the need, right? It cannot be everyone and anyone. If someone has asked you, well, who do you think your product or your service is going to be good for, or who it will serve? If you're saying anyone, you're on the wrong footing. If you're saying everyone, you're also on the wrong footing. Identify the people that are going to be your target market, the people who you know from your research are a fit for your product. The promotion needed to make your product attractive and desirable to those people in the marketplace is the next consideration. Okay, this is part of your marketing mix, right? What are the promotion? What are the channels of reaching them? Channels are like, you know what? Most of these people I can reach online. That's cheap and easy. But you know what? It may be some of these folks fall into a category, whether it be by age or gender or some other category, where they're not accessing online. And I know this from doing my research. I know that, you know, there are a particular group of seniors living in a particular way who may not be accessing most of their information online. So I have to determine what's the channel to reach them. Okay? Nowadays, social media is very heavy, but it's not necessarily the only channel of reaching out to people. Okay? In some areas, if it's a targeted area that you're providing the product and service for, in some areas, flyer drops still work. Paying the local paper when they deliver to insert your flyer in their newspaper may also be a way of reaching them. You have to just determine what's the channel that will make your product or communication of your product get to who you want it to get to, and put your product across or your service across in a way that would be desirable to them. The other element or foundation of this marketing is what price? Who else is in the marketplace? What are the prices that they're charging? Right? Are there tons of other people putting out books on improvisation? If McBurney feels that, you know what, his book is really a unique product in the sense that it's never been quite done this way before, etc., then he may say, hey, you know what, I can charge a bit of a premium for my product. If the marketplace is flooded with lots of books on improvisation, and he's not determining that this is really a premium standout product, have to be really, you know, objective about that decision, then he may say, okay, you know what, I'm going to enter the marketplace at a price level that it doesn't necessarily cost more than the other people. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to say, I'll hit them with the value and they'll notice that it's the same price as most of the others, right? Another ploy is entering low, right? I enter the marketplace, I take a little bit of a hit in terms of the profits I'm able to make, but I'm entering the market with the lowest price. I'm undercutting all of the materials that are on the shelf that are doing similar things. I'm coming in at the lowest price because I'm going to use that as part of my marketing strategy, right? So whatever you choose to do is part of your marketing strategy. That's the key to remember. And you're going to say that, you know, if I'm using the lowest, coming in at a low price, I'm going to say that in my marketing products. You get all this for the lowest price available, right? Etc. And also, where are you going to put your product so that it's easily accessible to the people who want it, right? Nowadays, as I said, there's a lot of sales online, a lot of deliverability online. I would say that was one of Amazon's perhaps greatest tool, is that they made it so that you didn't have to go to the bookstore, right? You could actually sit at home and order it and it'll be delivered. Okay? So what they did was they eliminated, or you could say expanded, the place that people can access the stuff by making that place everywhere. I talked a little bit before about marketing in the digital realm, okay? Because there is a paradigm shift in technology right now, there are great opportunities available in terms of marketing in this global village, right? And ever-changing channels to market to. You could create a unique brand that will be noticed digitally. You could reach your loyal following and then attract new customers with that. Interactivity is key in terms of marketing online. Uh, Personalization, digital storytelling, virtual reality. Digital media is a powerful, powerful tool. Having an interactive website is perhaps a really significant and very important tool. So anyway, I don't want to go too much into detail about that, but um, yeah, so let's look at administration. Okay, so administrative tasks for your business, if you're going to be a sole proprietorship and not necessarily have employees, which most small businesses don't. It's usually a sole proprietorship, or even if it's a general partnership, it's really the partners in their sleeves rolled up that are getting this thing going. But here's the thing: whether or not you're a sole proprietorship, whether or not you're a general partnership, limited partnership, or even a corporation, regardless, administrative tasks are necessary and germane to the functioning of your business, right? So some people go into business and they really have either no idea or they don't really like administration, right? They don't find that to be the exciting part of the business, and so they don't treat it as important. Administering of your business is extremely important. And so if you realize, a bit into it that, what, I hate administration, get somebody else to do it. Even if you start off with somebody part-time in a small way that you can afford, consider it a good investment, and get somebody to do the administration. Because often it is in this area that a lot of artists' businesses fall apart, right? Because if they're not used to understanding what happens in the office, and their mindset has really always been about producing the finished product, they're going to drop the ball if they're not careful, right? So I just listed a couple of the significant tasks that are involved in administration: communication, scheduling, record keeping, and tax filing. And tax filing is extremely important. Recording daily incoming, outgoing transactions, etc., reconciling financial reports. All of these things are extremely important. And if it's something that you don't have the fastest facility to do yourself, then finding ways to get assistance. So you could hire a bookkeeper part-time. There's a lot of bookkeepers that will work for a number of clients, right? And so they make up their salary by getting a little bit from each client, and then they provide bookkeeping services. At least that will keep you able to file. There's a lot of software out there, like I use QuickBooks, and there are others. I don't want to promote anyone, but there are others. And there are also, the task of organizing, right? Maintaining calendars, sorting, organizing, etc., etc. Okay, so I just thought I would, just to give, oops, went too far, just to give a little bit of an idea of when you're doing your business, a place where a lot of money is lost is in not filing expenses properly, right? So you've got a business, you've got some revenue stream, and then when you file income tax, you want to pay as least tax as possible. And one of the areas in which you could do that is by representing all of the expenses, all of the eligible expenses that you can. Okay? And so some typical areas in which businesses have expenses that should be leveraged when it comes to income tax time, advertising, anything you spend on promotion, print ads, business cards, blah, 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 business insurance, whatever you pay for it. Keep track of the payments, write them off on tax time, commission and fees. If you pay an agent to bring in clients, or you give them a percentage of sales, you can expense that. Track any fees, legal advice. If you outsource bookkeeping, as I described before, business consulting, you bring somebody in to say, okay, you know what, I need some assistance in, setting up my business, etc. If you, all of that, contractor fees, all of that, write off. Online payments for platforms like PayPal, blah, 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 whatever the processing fees are, write those off. Office supplies, right? Even if it's your own home office, right? Because many people are going to work from home, right? If it's your home office, pens, paper, staplers, everything that it costs, the mouse, your computer, all of that, hosting, web hosting, okay? Everything that you can write off. Better you err on the side of trying to write it off and let the accountant or whoever is doing the final tax return, let them tell you, okay, you know what, this is not eligible, etc. Because after a while, you'll learn what's eligible. Okay, but don't make the mistake of not writing off as much as you can. Okay, supplies, legal and professional services. Okay, and then of course larger items that you have to purchase, printers, fax machines, whatever. Okay. Financing. There are some folks who are going to, in order to either grow the business or actually start it off right from scratch, depending on the type of business that it is. It may be a business that does not require significant cash to begin, and it may be a business that requires a significant investment. Some of the opportunities for that can be financial institutions, family. Those of you with the rich uncle or rich auntie who, always thought that you were great and would love to see you, expand, tap them up for this investment in your business. Friends, grants, there are often small business grants available, small business loans, leverage assets that you might have. So if you have property already or inheritance, property you've inherited, etc., all of these are opportunities to leverage assets so that you can get the financing that you may need to either begin the business or to grow the business. Okay. Also, taking on partners is another way to do it. I talked before about limited partnerships, which one might take on, a limited partner, an investor, and so on, and also larger investors, right? The strategic plan that we talked about, or business plan that we talked about earlier, that is key to talking to investors, okay? Because when you go to talk to an investor, even when you go to your financial institution and you want to have a loan, they want to see that their funds have the best possible chance of having a return. So they want to see your plans. Do we think that this is a successful plan? Do we think that there's some opportunities here, in order to be able to freely engage this entrepreneur and with some reasonable reduction of risk that we're going to be able to get a return on our investment, and that you won't foreclose on the default, I should say. You won't default on the loan, etc. Okay, so when you're budgeting, I just pulled this from one of the presentations that we did before because it's really the same. Okay, when you're budgeting, try to access funds from different revenue streams if possible. Research a range of opportunities to fund your project or your oops. Anyway, so this I covered this before, so I won't spend too much time on it, but because some of the principles are really the same, that's why I brought it back. Okay. Also, if you're looking at opportunities that are involving grant writing for some of those small business loans or small business grants and so on that are often available through governmental agencies or other kinds of organizations, same thing. Work on improving your grant writing, right? Because it can be quite a lucrative means of getting some of the startup money or getting some money to grow your business. Okay. As I said, these slides here I represented before, but as I said, the sentiment, and the approach is really the same. Okay. Here's what I have to say about managing people. Treat employees and volunteers, if you have them, the way you would like to be treated. It's really simple. And provide opportunities for their growth. Okay? These are the things that I brought it down to myself in terms of what makes loyal employees and what keeps people working hard at their jobs. Okay? At the end of the day, if they're treated in a manner that is the way the employer themselves would like to be treated, then they don't see a discrepancy. They don't feel that, hey, I'm being mistreated, and that the employer doesn't treat himself or herself like that. Also, if you're providing opportunities for people to grow, they will more often than not be loyal, and they will give heartily of their talents. All right, so let's talk. Questions, comments? Sorry, go ahead, Derek.
There. Great stuff, and kind of mind-boggling at the same time if you're hearing this kind of stuff for the first time. And
Yeah.
I'm not for sure, because TBS has been around for a long time, and when we started 35 years ago, some of those easy steps for registration are exactly what we did to create the not-for-profit, eventually becoming a charitable organization, which might be relevant to some people. But along the way, we applied for a lot of grants, and a couple of things happened, and I wonder if you could comment on them. When we hit a certain threshold as an organization, this is less relevant to artists, of course, but when artists get incorporated and create a not-for-profit, like I'm familiar with a few, like Toronto Tableau Ensemble and others who have hired an executive director and run their band like they are an organization. You need to be audited when you get funding at a certain level. I think it was $20,000 to the Toronto Arts Council. So we have an auditor, and that audit is in sync with our annual general meeting. And you didn't talk a lot about that, and I don't know how important it is, so just comment. But there's something else within your comments that I may double back with you on afterwards, because we've asked our auditor about the conflict of interest area that you talked about today. And as you may or may not know, we have a board of directors, and we used to have musicians on our board of directors, and that was challenged by one of the funders who said they can't be paid, you need to get them off your board. So we created an advisory council where all the musicians are ex officio. They attend board meetings, they are informed about all the details of the organization, but they can't vote. It's the only thing that they can't do. And this year I actually talked to the auditor again about this, and he said what you said today, and we may want to revise our policy and put our musicians back on the board, or put them on the board, because if they declare their interest, their conflict of interest, it would be okay. So do you have any hands-on experience with that?
Yes, I do.
Wow.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. So there used to be this area of conflict of interest on not for nonprofit organizations for many years was vague. To be quite honest with you, all the research I've done shows that the not-for-profit guidelines, and what I used to do for many of the organizations, I looked at the Ontario government's guidelines, because there's, like, if you look for not-for-profit um, guidelines, they're plentiful. Okay, what I used to do is use the Ontario government's not-for-profit guidelines. Okay, because I figured, okay, if that's good enough for the Ontario government, it should fly, right? Now, a lot of organizations and individuals were misinformed for a very long time in terms of the legal understanding of conflict of interest, etc. And so many people thought, individuals included, thought that if you were on a not-for-profit board, for example, you couldn't possibly be hired to do the things you do. So let's say, for example, you yourself, Derek, right? Let's say you're sitting on a board of an organization in the community. You're an agent, etc., and they want to put on a concert, right? And they say, well, why should we look any further? Here's Derek, and he has, tons and tons of experience at doing this very said thing. Now, in the old thinking and the misinformed thinking, they'd say, despite the fact that Derek is on this board, sorry, we can't use him. He can't, because he can't derive any revenue from us unless he were going to do it in a voluntary basis. He can't derive any revenue from us for that. That, however, is not true. Okay, which is why the auditor and myself are saying the same thing. It's not true. What is true is that you cannot participate in the negotiation on both sides of the fence. So you can't be the guy we're trying to hire to do this role for us and be the person on the board having a debate about what we should pay you or whether we should hire you and all of that. So what you have to do is declare a conflict of interest. If you want to see this in action, look at city councils, right? So Councillor A, right, is living in this particular ward, but Councillor A owns some properties, right? As many councillors often do. Councillor A owns some properties, there's the old family business that is still there, and it's a restaurant or whatever in the ward, and he's the councillor, or she's the councillor, right? So when that item comes up and they're looking at, we're going to do some renovations to this to that particular street, we're going to rip up the sidewalk and put in trees and whatever, and that councillor knows I have a business there that is likely to benefit in some material way from this work being done, that councillor has to declare a conflict of interest. First thing councillor to do is get up and say, listen, I declare a conflict of interest because my family owns property in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And what they do is they get up, they leave the council chambers, they go off, and then they call them back when that item is over, so that they cannot be involved in discussing it. They cannot be, you understand what I'm saying? If they are even caught after the fact, having spoken to another councillor about it, that could be an issue, because they could be accused of influencing somebody else to vote in the way they would like. You see what I mean?
Well,
And
that's at the most political level.
Correct.
And I've been on juries where I've been in this conflict of interest zone and left the room. So most recently, the Harbourfront Nordic Bridges, the TBS actually had an application in. We weren't successful, but when it came up, I didn't participate. So
exactly.
that's very cool, and I want to see if I can make this practical for those attending, just because this whole registration of a business area and such, it is relevant and newly relevant in recent years, since the Ontario Music Fund, now under what's called Ontario Creates, the province, has opened up funding to musicians in the lowest of the categories of funding. There's about 4 major categories, and the top level is hundreds of thousands of dollars. But if you're, we know Steve Strongman in the blues community has been a beneficiary with his, and so I've seen more and more musicians actually benefiting and registering yourself as an incorporated company was one of the steps. They didn't want to deal with individuals who were not registered. Now, exactly, I think there's a lot of consultation with the officers there that will guide a person, but if there's anybody here who's leaning that way or wants to go after that money, maybe we could take the red square off so that if anybody wants to show their face, they can show up. And we do have a question in the chat from Ed Taylor, who's got issues with his computer. Can you see that, Quammie?
I can. Can you read it for me, please?
He's got a problem with his mic. And regarding business registration, etc., what about HST registration? Are everyday musicians billing, say a club, bar, whatever, the HST? I think I know the answer, but I'll let you jump in.
Sorry, I didn't quite get the question though.
Are everyday musicians billing, say a club, bar, or whatever, and you know, like as in, you know, your fee is $1,000, can I put HST on top of that? And of course that is true if you are registered, but
yeah, so
why don't you jump in?
Yeah, so no, I was going to say, you know, a lot of so there are two sides of the story. One is the government wants everyone who is providing a service that is an HST regulated service. In other words, the government would like to make sure that when there are transactions that take place, provision of service or products, and it falls under the guidelines that this is something that should be hit with the tax, what the government wants you to do really is to collect that tax on their behalf and then remit it to them, right? Which is why what people do, in order to do that, you would register with the government, and then that makes you eligible to collect the HST on the government's behalf and then remit it to them. That's how it's supposed to go. I have to say that there's still a lot of artists who, once they realize that really they are not, there's no real benefit to the artist per se for providing that conduit other than contribution to your country, right?
I think that you actually get, let me just put 2 points into that. One is that I think, isn't there a threshold? And Jackie Wimbush here on the
yes, there's a threshold. There's a threshold.
Because my recollection of HST is that, let's say you collected $6,000, and when you remit, you actually get some of that back. I know the TBS gets, we get a big chunk of our HST back from the government.
That's because of your charitable status.
Okay.
Yeah.
But not an individual.
Nope.
It's straight in, straight out.
Yep.
Okay. And the threshold.
And you're right about the threshold. I can't remember what the number is, but you're right. The government doesn't want, okay, if you can imagine from the government standpoint, it could become a nightmare if every single person did it, regardless of whatever small sum of money they actually work for, right? It would be, at a certain point, it would be an administrative nightmare. So what they say is, look, there's a threshold that we set, and if you make annually over this amount, then we expect you to, in other words, this is a substantial service or business, etc. If you make over a certain amount, then we expect you to remit the HST for us.
I believe it. I recall 30,000 as the threshold.
Yeah, I thought it was 40, but you know what? It could be wrong.
Yeah.
I didn't.
Soon enough.
It's easy to find out though. Just get on their site, have a look.
Bill is suggesting there's more to the HST than what we're discussing.
Yeah.
And Jackie's, I think, agreeing with us. I've just replied in the chat to Sarah, who's asking.
Perhaps, yeah. Can they share with us? Whether or not there's a return to the business, the small business person, or to the artist, for example.
Well, Bill is the one who's making the, Bill McBurney is making the comment about the HST. So maybe we can bring his mic and he can elaborate, and I'll.
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Yeah. First of all, the volumes vary a little bit, but can people hear me? I'm not too loud or too soft?
I can hear you.
Derek, you're suggesting it might be
louder? It is low, Bill, so if you can boost it, great.
Exactly, because I noticed, as I say, there's differences. I want to strike a happy medium here. How is that?
That's good.
Okay. As long as everybody can hear. Okay, well, let me just say a few things, the basics about the HST, because in many ways it's not that complicated. And what's been said so far is actually a little bit misleading. First of all, it's a very comprehensive tax. It applies to any commercial activity, which could involve either a good or a service. So it's very broad, and of course it's going to cover musicians as well. Any sort of a commercial activity is subject to the requirements of the GST, and there is a threshold, and it's rather low. I think they should be raising it, because it's been the same for, I think, since the inception of the tax, and it's merely $20,000. And if you're running a business and you're paying rent, boom, you know, that's you're going to meet that threshold in no time. So in any event, 20,000 is the threshold which requires you to register. If your revenues within a year are over 20,000, you have to register. Now, the accounting for the GST is a separate return for it, and what's important to recognize is that it's a commodity tax, and it's structured such that you pay tax on your outputs, but relief from the tax on your inputs. So you have to declare tax on your revenues, but you're also permitted to deduct the taxes that you've paid in terms of expenses and costs. So it's a net effect. Now, that can get complicated, and there are provisions, and this will apply especially to small musicians or smaller players. For example, there's a so-called quick method, and the quick method enables the taxpayer to not have to worry about tracking all of the invoices and receipts on the expense side. He just accounts for tax at a flat rate, which is not 13%, it's considerably less, based on his outputs alone. And that's important because, in fact, that usually works to the benefit of the artist. They also have a small traders threshold, I think of 200,000, where the rates are lower. So all I'm saying is that for those people that are, if you're over 20,000, you're required to be registered. But if you're under 200,000, the government does make an effort to give you a bit of a break on the full 13%. And in any event, from the standpoint of the bookkeeping and the tax accounting, they have a so-called quick or simplified method that enables you just to account for tax on your revenues rather than having to track both revenues and expenses. So let me say that much. You can also get registered even if you're under 20,000 and you're engaged in a commercial activity. So you have that option, and I guess there's some debate on this, especially for people like musicians. Do they want the headache if they're not required to be registered? In my own case, I'm not. But there are some accountants, I can think of one in particular who says you really should be registered because you get the benefit of those tax inputs. And if you have major expenditures like a capital expense, that can be a significant, that can have a significant impact on 1 year's return. And it's different from income tax, because income tax, you basically depreciate by way of capital cost allowance or CCA. But under the HST, you actually get the whole input tax credit right away. So you're not really depreciating it in the same manner. So I'm probably getting into a little too much detail. All I'm saying is that there's a number of points of view on this about whether you should be registered or not if you have an option. But just to summarize once again, very, very broadly, if you're engaged in a commercial activity, and most of the things we're talking about today constitute a commercial activity, including being a musician, if you're above the threshold, and I believe it's merely $20,000, then you're required to be registered. And that means you now have to file a return, and you can do so semi-annually, quarterly, or annually. Often people just do it with their income tax return once a year. And in that case, you have to pay tax on your outputs or your revenues, and you get a credit for the GST that you paid on your inputs or expenses. And that's the basic way it works because it's an input-output tax. However, for small traders, they do have options that relieve you of a lot of bookkeeping effort, and actually, at the end of the day, the government gives you something of a benefit, and you'll do better than a straight detailed tax accounting if you use something like the quick method. So let me just say that much. I hope that helps.
Yeah, that's very helpful. So yeah, so I think if I understand you correctly, Bill, it's not really so much that the government is giving back money to the it's that they really get a credit on their outputs, basically.
Well, hang on, Quammie. I want to make that very, very clear. You're always required to account for tax on your outputs, which is your revenue.
Yes.
You always get a credit for any related inputs or expenses. So
Right.
it's a net.
I see. Okay.
So you only account. It looks a little like your income tax, but the formulas are different. And in any event, I would really suggest to people that, especially if you're required to be registered, you're over that 20,000, or you want to elect to do so, look at some of the simpler options because it can make your life easy. And at the end of the day, you'll do better than if you did a strict tax accounting as the bigger players do. And I might just to give you some understanding of how this this GST works. It's very different from income tax. So for example, if you're in the export business, exports are zero rated. So if you export goods, often what's going to happen is you're not required to pay GST on your outputs, but you get credits for all the inputs. So if you're just trading goods, if you're just a middleman, you're going to be in a negative tax position routinely. And so you will always be getting GST credits. Your returns will be credit returns. Now that's not the most of us here, especially as musicians, you want to make money. So you're hoping that at the end of the year you've got something to show for what you've done. But I just take the example of an exporter, if it's to give you a notion of how the tax works, because it looks a little anomalous. But an exporter, zero-rated goods, never pays any tax on his outputs, but he's in a commercial activity and a business, so he can take his tax on the inputs. So he's routinely in a net credit position, getting checks from the government. And it's perfectly, legitimate and in order. That's the way that the tax works. For the rest of us who are trying to make money and actually might succeed in doing so, you generally are in some kind of a net positive position. So your GST on outputs is going to exceed your GST on inputs.
Mm-hmm.
If you're doing a detailed accounting, if you're a smaller player, consider those simplified options because they're much easier to cope with.
Mm-hmm.
You can file on a simple method, and at the end of the day, the government does structure that so it does not injure you. In fact, if anyone gets injured, the government does on the smaller players.
Okay, thanks for sharing that. Okay. Derek, you got to yeah. Okay.
Do that.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Bill. Excellent.
Yeah, terrific, Bill. Can you take are you controlling the screen to take off the red thing just so that if people do want to show their faces, they can? There's a handful of other comments.
I don't think I have that control.
Then let's ask Huma. Huma's got another event at 4 o'clock, so she might be distracted.
Okay.
Let's just see what happens with that. It's not that crucial. But can you not see the chat also? Because the chat has a couple of things. I've answered a few people.
I can't see the chat.
Okay. Then I will.
Okay, hold on. Maybe I might now. One sec. Okay, so, I can see the chat now.
We were talking about HST and back and forth, and there was a Sarah Sokol who has actually done a follow-up to my links where I shared her a couple of links on where to find grants, and then there was Jackie had asked about
So
the grant.
Jackie said something about the eligibility on grants isn't gender specific.
No, that's me answering him because he said, is there something for male Americana artists after I had answered
Oh, I see. Okay. Okay. Gotcha.
about a female specific kind of, and I brought up Women in Music where they have a nice resources page, but I
Yeah.
also brought up Music Ontario, which has got a great resources page. So it's both of those are useful for doing further research. But in the meantime, Sarah had a kind of a specific question there. Can you, how and when put specialized studies in your business? For example, let's say I start a full-on business starting as making some merch in the form of flat fashion or beauty, requiring a specific skill. I think we're leaving the music Zoom today with that question. I'm not sure where that's going.
Okay. Sorry. Well, read the question from me, Derek.
Yeah, I mean, maybe if she came on camera, music merch. Okay, she clarified in the chat just now. Can you put specialized studies in your business? For example, let's say I start full-on business starting as making merch. Yeah, I'm not sure what the
Okay.
question.
So is she asking if, yes, Sarah, it would be helpful if you can unmute actually, because.
Yes, hi.
Hi.
Excuse me, French. I was just wondering because we're talking about business and how to start a business, etc. I'm an artist,
Yes.
and I was thinking to start a business maybe and making my own merch, okay, in a
Yes.
specific form, and this required me to go to a school, a
Okay.
specialized school. For example, let's say, I don't know, I'm going to give I want to make apron, which is not the case, but like, and I need
Yes.
to work metal or
Yes.
something, to
Yeah.
make aprons as merch for my music business as a side stream of income. Can I
Yes.
declare that as a musician on my business, on a sort of business? Like how is that working for me as a musician if I'm
Right.
making
So,
my own merch and develop
so,
a
so
business
if
out of
let me
that?
just let me just rephrase it to make sure I understand.
Thank you.
So what you're asking is if I have to acquire a specific skill in order to produce the product or service that I'm going to be selling,
Yes.
can I claim that on my taxes
Yes.
as an expense? In some cases you can.
Thank you.
So what? Yeah, in some cases you can. So what you would do is you'd really talk to your tax accountant because there's some. Bill might know actually. Bill,
Yeah,
can you shed any light on that?
yes, I certainly can. I was just indicating in the chat that I can address that question. I pluralized it, but just to address the computer specifically, that's considered a capital asset, which means that you cannot write it off entirely within the year. This also applies to software. So it's an asset. It's a long-term asset that is subject to capital cost allowance, which is sort of like the tax department's version of depreciation. And you can write it off on a percentage basis, which is, I think, for computers and software, it may be there might be slightly different classes. I think computers are 30% and software might be 50%. You sort of have to look it up. It's not hard to find. I know the categories are 8 and 10. But the computer cannot be written off in its entirety. You set it up in CCA. It's also sometimes subject to a half-year rule where you can't write off even, half of it has to be left for the succeeding year. It gets a little complicated, or at least the formulas. There's a lot to the forms. It's not that hard to do when you're doing a return. But in any event, you have to set it up as a capital asset, and you get to write off 30% of it on a diminishing basis over the years. And your software, the same thing. So you can't write it off all at once, no matter what your circumstance.
So can you address the issue of whether or not, someone who, for example, is going to start a business, and decides that in order for them to do that, they need to acquire perhaps a specialized skill, right? So they're
Yeah,
going to go, they're going to, the artist who says they want to get into doing metal art structures, and they're going to go take a course in welding.
you know
Um,
something.
can they
That's a
write
good.
off? I think Sarah's question is,
I
can I
know.
write
I know.
can I write off as an expense the any portion of the cost of the education that the
I know.
course that I'm taking to get the skill?
I know. From an income tax standpoint, you can only deduct um, expenses that are real and legitimate and pertain directly to your business. And that's why I don't have a quick and ready answer for this. But I can say, uh, like, assume we're all musicians here, and that we had to pay a fee to attend this seminar. Well, that would be a legitimate business expense. Okay? Now, Sarah's question is a little bit different because it doesn't fall squarely within the mainstream of music. It's sort of a different undertaking for which she's preparing herself and educating herself. And that may be viewed as a personal expense as opposed to a business expense because you're not in business yet. So, Sarah, I'd be inclined to just ask your accountant because I think the issue boils down to that. Is it a legitimate business expense, or in which case you can deduct it, or is it a personal expense because you can't write off a university education, or
Correct.
you see what I'm saying? And that's the basic distinction here. Does it pertain directly to your business? Because, like I say, if all of us here are musicians and we had to pay a fee for this course, that would be a legitimate expense for both income tax and GST purposes. But instead, she's asking a slightly different animal. If it doesn't bear directly on her business, and in fact, maybe to foster a new skill, well, that may be educational and personal, which and she's not even generating any income at it yet. So I'd be inclined to just put that to your accountant or tax preparer, Sarah. But in all likelihood, that's the way that the issue or the question is going to turn.
Bill,
Yeah.
I would take that actually a little more favorably, in as much as merch is a very common component of a musician's revenue stream, and that, she's having to upgrade her skills, perhaps, I think, is at the heart of this, that she wants to kind of learn how to do it better. But merch is especially in rock,
Oh
extremely
yeah.
common.
Derek, that's absolutely right. And somebody who's um, working with merchandise in the course of their music business, there's no doubt about it. All those expenses are legitimate. But it's sort of an interesting point. Is the education, the training required? I tend to agree with you. I hear you loud and clear, and I think that's a very good observation.
Yeah. So Sarah, that's kind of why I think Bill has borne it out too, that it's very gray because on the one hand, you are keeping it kind of within. It's a business within the spectrum of what you're already doing, right? Because you're creating merchandise that you can actually retail when you go out. So in other words, it's not separate from your business as an artist, right? And but then on the other hand, that's why I say, your accountant will be able to make a determination as to where it squarely falls, or where they're going to make an argument for it, because of the fact that it is a big gray. And so, if, for example, the government makes a determination that no, 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 this is an education that you're trying to have in a whole new field or something like that, then they probably won't allow it, right? If they get it as part of what you need in order to produce this enhanced product, if we like, then they may permit that. So I hope that's helpful. Thank you, Bill.
Maybe the last thing I can say here, which is sounds rather humorous and glib, but it's actually true. You can do anything you want until you get audited, and then then there's the day of reckoning, and that's why some accountants are more aggressive than others, and they may actually view it that way. Put it through,
Yeah.
let them catch it. but I'm not sure I favor that entirely. But I think that's the issue. Is it education and personal oriented as opposed to as to pertaining strictly to the business itself?
Yeah.
And I see Jack's point for sure.
The strictly is an interesting word, because Sarah followed up while we were talking to say, can merch be related to my music? Well, of course. I mean, and
Exactly.
the more related it is, as in
Right.
the brand of the CD launch that you put out, it looks like the T-shirt, it looks like the keychain, the mug, all the components. That the better, that consistency is there, and it is another revenue stream, and some people are really good at it. I've hired bands that sold underwear off the stage. The first time I saw that was Bouzou Chavis from Louisiana, and he moved a lot of underwear that night, along with and
Oh my God.
his wife was there helping sell the merch, and there was a famous blues underwear merch story that I'll share with you folks, just to keep your Sunday afternoon lively, from the Edmonton Blues Festival. One of the producers was specialized in blues thongs for ladies, and there's
Wow.
Edmonton Blues branding on it, and I think they moved pretty good too.
Okay. Ed, did you Bill offered an explanation of Ed, was that good? Was that satisfactory?
I'm not sure. He's still here.
Yeah, he's still here. I just want to make sure that he was satisfied with
It was Jackie who
the,
left. Yeah.
the answer to his question about the computer.
You need to. Can you unmic or unmute Ed and?
Oh my goodness. I don't have that control.
No, he has to do it, or Huma might get him, but he has to be listening too. So.
Exactly.
Okay, hold on. Let me. Ed, are you there?
Oh, Ed just did a chat. All good.
All good. Okay, cool.
According to Ed, so he got what he was after. Good.
Or maybe I can unmute people. Hold on. Let's see. Yeah, maybe she handed me over the
reins.
Yeah.
Okay. But we do have another event coming up at 4:00. So I don't know if you want to summarize. I mean, these 4 sessions have been fantastic, Quammie, in terms of walking people through, and just to remind anybody listening to this that they are permanent records on the TBS website and can be accessed. Maybe Huma can come in and clarify that, because we see these digital live streams, the performances, and these kind of sessions picking up a lot of traction after the fact. You know, not everybody can be here today.
Yeah.
And there, she's put it in the chat from our website. There's a link. Are they also on Facebook or YouTube, Huma? She doesn't want to talk, but she can type fast. I shared it all at the very beginning, but for anyone who logged later on, I actually logged on later on myself, Huma, so forgive me for that, but I had to do some shopping. Yeah, I think that link there from the TBS website, it tells everybody what they need to know in terms of following up and telling their friends. There's a lot of good advice here. And Quammie, did you want to just summarize on?
I can. And I also want to, invite people to, go to the TBS website. That's, it's all there. And I thought this was a really, really great idea, Derek and Huma. And and I would encourage you to do more. It's such a great forum for really sharing information and getting the discussions going. For me, I guess, I was able to get across some of my big messages for us as artists, which is that we need to shift our thinking, especially the musicians. We need to shift our thinking away from looking at music being disseminated in only the traditional ways. Although, you know what, anybody who knows me knows how much I love to play in front of an audience. But I think we also have to look at ways in which that could be translated as well. And I would advise all artists to look at ways in which we can diversify our streams of revenue. Because the thing, I thought about this a lot over the last couple of years. And, my feeling truly is that I would rather see an artist look at new ways of disseminating the art, new ways of engaging, rather than them having to do something else to subsist so that they can do art. Do you know what I mean? Because I think if we go down the latter route, we're going to see a diminishing in the tremendous art output that we have in our community and the tremendous talent, right? That of people that are doing it. I know a few people who were able to juggle sort of careers outside of music and still become great musicians. And one of the few I know is on the screen right now. But it's not a thing that a lot of people actually can do. It takes a lot of. I mean, one day I'm going to sit down with Bill and he's going to tell me how he actually did that. But I would say for most people, it can be a little bit tax. Most musicians I know trying to struggle to really be good at their craft struggle with balancing having to do anything else for any substantial period while still trying to be an artist, especially when you're young and you're honing the basic skills and so on. So I say we got to diversify, find more and more opportunities that we can use in music that will be strengthening our musical skills and applying them in different ways and so on. And also with regards to entrepreneurship, that we, in whatever way we choose, in whatever way we choose, we can use some of the skills we've learned in music. A lot of them are transferable, and we have to move away from the mindset that previously pitted musicians and artists as people who were non-business, right? And I can tell you, having went ahead in my life and studied business, as some of you may know, I have an MBA, and what I could tell you the aha moment I had in the middle of my one of my MBA classes. This is quite a while ago, but the aha moment I had when I jumped up and I said, "Oh, it's just jazz," because they were describing the environment that business takes place in, and and they were describing that if you function in this environment and it's constantly changing, and then you have to be able to use the virtuoso skills basically that you develop to give you the ability to be free enough to respond to that environment and its constant changes, and responding to all the partners and all the various elements and how they're shifting. I was like, it's just jazz. So, there's a lot, as I said, we as artists can bring to business that will make it exciting, creative. And so I want to see more people looking at opportunities and so on. And kind of that's the message I wanted to send. I hope it was clear in terms of my take on this whole thing. And please, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share something I love, and I hope that it's helped somebody somewhere.
I'll make a closing comment myself then, Quammie, to thank you for the contributions that you made. I see several positive comments in the chat now, just from Sarah, because we've shared a few links on resources at the TBS website and at other spots. And this professional development phenomena, when I got involved in music, there really wasn't very much like this. There was no Music Ontario. you know, the windows for SOCAN has helped musicians over the years, but now there's more and more, and especially right now, everybody's on Zoom having sessions like this. And we look forward to physically getting everybody together at the Blues Summit 10 next January. And I shared that link with Sarah, and we'll be producing our talent search in between now and then. So there's a number of things that the TBS does as a non-for-profit. We're literally an arts service organization, and there's our wonderful manager coming onto the screen to say goodbye, I think, as well, or hello and goodbye. Hi Huma, how you doing?
Hello. Thank you so much. I don't really have much to say other than thank you so much again to everybody who joined us every Sunday throughout this April. I cannot believe we actually on the final session. It was just so fast, but I think it was very useful, and hopefully a lot more people can watch it and get benefit out of it from the recordings and, you know, further notes and all. So thank you so much again, Quammie.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Huma, I'm going to speak very briefly because it's coming up in like 15 minutes, but we have a session called a Pioneer Profile, and it is featuring a video of one of the great legendary Toronto singers, Jody Drake. We found a VHS video, had it transferred to digital. It's going up to be shared with people today, and then it'll be permanent. But Jody had her own TV show at CBC in the 60s, influenced a lot of people, performed in the Women's Blues Review. She earned a Blues of the Feeling Award from us when she was alive, and that video is going to roll. It's from 1998 and the Jazz Festival, or 95, held at the Toronto City Hall in the big tent, where she's got a band. The show leans to the jazz side of her repertoire, but she had a huge repertoire, and the blues community loved her, and we shared her with the jazz community. And that day, David Bernard introduced her, and he's one of the founders of the Toronto Blues Society. Huma, anything you want to say about the Jody video before we tell people to go over there?
Yeah, just you can just tune in, and if you want to watch on either TBS Facebook or YouTube, it's probably going to be a little bit delayed, more than 4 p.m. as of now. So, but it will be there for sure today.
Great. Well, Quammie, let's stay in touch. I've got an idea or two that I want to talk to you about.
Okay. Thank you, Derek. Thank you, Huma.
Thanks, everyone.
Bill, Sarah, Ed, Brian, Patrick, Kathy, Mike, Veronica, and everybody I can't see. Thank you.